आपने लिटरली माउंट एवरेस्ट 16 साल की उम्र में क्लाइम करा.
I still remember my Hindi teacher asking कि तो अब कौन-कौन एवरेस्ट चढ़ने जाना चाहता है. Minimum age for the basic mountaineering course is actually 17 years old. I always tell everybody around me that my real achievement is not that I've climbed 8,000 meter peaks.
You were declared clinically dead in a way, right?
Many situations like this in the mountains where the rope has broken, I've gone tumbling down a mountain, the anchor came off 150 meters into a free fall. Obviously, I called my mom and I told her that day that, Mom, I'm not coming home this time. We were all 6-7 people were on the same rope down. So we all got off the rope and we were all hanging in a steep place.
Is there satellite phone जो चलेगा वहाँ से?
Sherpas are basically our backbone of our system when we're climbing 8,000 meter peaks. I had 11 clots in my head which was preventing adequate amount of blood flow on the left side of my body. Everest back in the day also costed 20 to 24 lakh rupees.
What do you eat on a mountain?
Chatpati stories, phenomenal information and awesome conversation जो करेंगी आपको help. The SamKShow.
Age 16. You heard that right. He climbed the Mount Everest at that tender age. He also holds a Guinness Book World Record for climbing two 8,000 meter mountains in 1 year before the age of 17. Arjun Vajpai, ladies and gentlemen, is on our show today, who has achieved so much besides just being a mountaineer. He is an inspiration for the upcoming generation who are going to be watching this podcast. If you're thinking about if you want to enter the field of mountaineering, this will be the most amazing podcast you'll ever hear, because you'll also hear about his personal life, how he did it, near-death experiences, paralytic attacks that he faced, but he overcame all of them. He's sitting with us right now. Let's have a conversation with him. Hi Arjun. So I have a mountain to climb. SamKShow जब मैंने स्टार्ट करा था, I said कि बहुत दूर तक जाना है, स्टार्ट कहाँ करें समझ नहीं आ रहा. आपने जेन्युइनली लिटरली माउंट एवरेस्ट 16 साल की उम्र में क्लाइम करा, जब लोग नॉर्मली अपने बच्चों को ऊबर से भेजने में डरते हैं. You've ended up actually scaling the Everest at 16. I mean, tell me about that. What made you do it?
I think definitely when you're 16 without your parents' support, you really can't do much. अगर वो चाहते उस टाइम पे मुझे चुपचाप बोलते कि पढ़ाई में दिमाग लगाओ, वैसे ही तुम्हारे रीटेस्ट बहुत आते हैं हर साल. I was very bad in academics. I was a below average student. Almost 6th onwards, every class I would have at least 2 to 3 retests every year. So PTM after PTM. It was very easy for them to deny it, but I think it took a lot of courage from my parents' side also to let me go. To the world, it almost seemed like my parents are taking one of the biggest foolish decisions of their life. But I think nobody could see the craziness which was inside me. From a very young age, I always knew that if I was going to do something in my life, it had to be with these two hands and these two legs.
But mountaineering का कैसे? Where did that passion really start from?
I think the first instance of mountaineering which I can think of in my earliest days would be me going to Pune to my grandparents' house and my nana taking us for short hikes in the evening, because close by to Pune there are the Sahyadri Hills, and my first instance was at Kalsubai Peak. He took us for a short evening hike और मैंने अपने नाना से पूछा कि अगर दुनिया यहाँ से इतनी खूबसूरत दिखती है तो मैं देखना चाहता हूँ कि इस दुनिया की हाईएस्ट पॉइंट से कितनी खूबसूरत दिखाई देगी.
ये पहला समिट था आपका?
This was essentially, you can call it definitely a summit, because at that particular point of time in my life, that was the highest I'd ever been.
Was there an affinity that your nana probably had towards hiking or climbing?
My father, my nana, both are basically ex-army officers.
Oh.
So my father was a paramilitary officer. He served in the first paras, and then my nana was a RT guy. So they've both served in forward postings in various crazy places. So I saw the summit. I was standing on the summit, and then I asked my nana this question, and he just shrugged his shoulders and he looked at me and he said that अच्छा तुम ये सवाल तो पूछो बट तुम्हें पता भी है कि इस दुनिया की सबसे हाईएस्ट जगह है क्या? तो I should have remembered, but as I said, I was not very good at academics, and I was never be present in my class to be reading the GK books. So he looked at me and he said, "It's called Mount Everest." Little did I know that year itself, when I went back, मेरी हिंदी की टेक्स्ट बुक में एक चैप्टर था, एवरेस्ट मेरी शिखर यात्रा बाय मैडम बचिंद्री पाल मैम.
क्या बात.
So the people who don't know Madam Bachindri Pal ma'am, which I don't think there are many out there, she's the first Indian lady to have climbed Mount Everest back in the 80s, and she's inspired a whole generation of mountaineers ahead of her. After the summer vacations, we went back, and this chapter was being discussed in my classroom. So that's the first time when I got an insight into mountaineering. I saw the view from the top of Kalsubai, and then I reached the classroom, and then I got an insight into what a mountaineer's life entails. At the end of the chapter, I still remember my Hindi teacher asking who all want to climb Everest. I was the only one in the classroom. Suddenly I said I want to climb Everest. कुछ पता नहीं था कि माउंटेनर कैसे बनते हैं, क्या कोर्सेज होते हैं, इंस्टीट्यूट्स क्या होते हैं, कैसे कैसे होता है. That instance I remember, and then suddenly I remember that there was this entire phase of many years, again getting back to the road, tuitions, PTM meetings, always being told that you're not good enough, work harder. So there was this desire from within, brewing from within, that I wanted to win one day. So after my 10th class board exams,
How old were you at that time? You're 15?
About 14 and a half, 14.
Okay.
So I kept, after my 10 boards, I was telling, अब मेरे पास 2 महीने, पापा मुझे ट्रैकिंग करने जाना है. तो he requested Jyot Singh uncle to put me and enroll me into a course at Nehru Institute of Mountaineering.
But courses हैं क्या? So if tomorrow people now today जो अभी स्कूल जा रहे हैं, and like you, right? 14 years, 15 years old.
Exactly. So I'm basically coming to that. So we went, I got enrolled into the basic mountaineering course. As soon as now I reached Uttarkashi at NIM, this is 2009, I realized that I wasn't the only monkey in this world. Like I realized I found fellow monkeys all around me. When I went to Uttarkashi at NIM, I realized that there were children from all across India, from various diverse backgrounds, from various economic and social stratas of a society, which were there and which had the same monkey-like attitude in them, and they wanted to pursue their passion. So then I realized this is a proper sport. That is the place where I was taught the ABCDs of mountaineering. And then I realized, so when you go about doing a basic mountaineering course, you're taught about how to read the weather, how to read the maps, how to start from packing your backpack to tying your shoelaces and what all kind of knots are there. So it's like a entire different school which I went to all over again, but from the very beginning. So that's the point when I got introduced to mountaineering, and I got to know that to become an official mountaineer and to take part in expeditions above 6,000 meters, which is any basic.
Did you know what 6,000 meters even meant at that time?
Exactly, I did not. I was being educated about all of this. So you had to be called a certified mountaineer. Also, you had to finish a basic and advanced mountaineering course. Even to qualify for the advanced mountaineering course, you had to go through icecraft, rockcraft and snowcraft and get an alpha grading in your basic mountaineering course, and only then you could apply for the advanced mountaineering course. So once you did your advanced mountaineering course and got an alpha grading, only then you can participate in expeditions above 6,000 meters. And पहली बारी जब मैं अपना basic mountaineering course करने गया था, तो वो typical NIM की भी जो website थी, it was like, I don't think it was updated for the last 20-25 years. So
I would like you to tell what NIM means
to
the audience.
NIM is one of the most prestigious mountaineering institutes in India. It is NIM stands for Nehru Institute of Mountaineering. It is in Uttarkashi, Uttarakhand. It was established by one of our first prime ministers, Jawaharlal Nehru ji himself, from the objective of training our armed forces and also inspiring and motivating the youth towards the mountains, to raise awareness towards the Himalayas. Not only this institute, there was another one which was parallelly opened in Darjeeling called HMI, which was started by Tenzing Norgay sir. Again, people who do not know about Sir Tenzing Norgay sir was one of the first, he was officially the first person to have climbed Mount Everest alongside Sir Edmund Hillary. And they made it to the top back in 1853 on the 20th of May. That's the moment where we see the only classic picture of Tenzing Norgay on the summit with the flag of Nepal and ice axe being held in one of his hands, because obviously, when asked to Sir Edmund Hillary that why isn't there a summit picture of yours, he very subtly said that because I only knew how to operate the camera. He did not know how to operate the camera. There were only 3 institutes back in the day, including ISM, HMI and NIM.
I would like you to name the acronyms. HMI stands for?
HMI is Himalayan Mountaineering Institute in Darjeeling, and I already explained, ISM is Indian Institute of Skiing and Mountaineering in Gulmarg.
In Gulmarg.
Yes. So these were the three basic institutes which were there, where our armed forces usually would go and train.
What comes to mind straight away is, you need a very gutsy parents to be able to say कि मेरा बेटा will leave home, go to a base camp and suddenly dream to go to the summit of the highest peak in the world.
We were, just as a family, we were a bit crazy. If I look back now in time, I remember I used to be in Montessori and my sister used to be in her first grade, and we used to be living in Dubai, and we were given responsibilities of house keys. Parents both were working. We were given responsibilities even when I was going for NIM. In 2009, I was, as I told you, 14 and a half years old. My father, like right where we live in sector 51 Noida, सामने एकदम स्टेट बस स्टैंड है, वहाँ पे बिठा दिया. उन्होंने बोल दिया कोई कुछ खाने को देगा तो खाना नहीं है. मुझे बोल दिया था कि वंस यू रीच उत्तरकाशी तो वहाँ क्लोजेस्ट पीसीओ से मुझे कॉल कर देना, एंड वो पता था कि वहाँ से एक बस जाती है. देयर वाज वेरी लिटिल इन्फॉर्मेशन, बट वी वर ऑलवेज सेड कि नहीं, यू हैव टू गो एंड मैनेज दीस थिंग्स ऑन ओन.
So you're 93 born and this is 2007.
2009, early 2009, correct.
You were set off like that.
Set off like that, packed off, and then my bags and stuff were no backpacks, no nothing. That by the end of the 28-day basic mountaineering course, I was so underprepared for the first time. When there was a debriefing happening after this 28-day course, somehow I managed to pull the 28 days off, क्योंकि नाक कट जाती वरना अगर ऐसे वापस चले जाते तो. I pulled it off, and the principal asked me, Colonel I.S. Thapa sir, he was the principal back in the day. And he asked me कि अच्छा वापस आओगे एडवांस कोर्स के लिए. तो मैंने सर आज के बाद मैं पहाड़ी वापस नहीं आने वाला. My nose was completely burnt, skin was peeling off. I was so highly underprepared. I had never seen such cold situations. Most of the people over there who had come for the basic mountaineering also, though they were just 2 or 3 years older than me, but they were prepared. My body weight was like a typical karate and football player, very lightweight. जितना मेरा body weight था उतने का तो backpack वहाँ लगा के रोज लगड़ा लगाते थे.
Average age क्या थी?
तो minimum age for the basic mountaineering course is actually 17 years old, but I was younger. But because my father was from the Marathas and Colonel I.S. Thapa sir was from the Marathas,
So you were like this prodigy kid around over there.
I was given certain special treatment, and I was enrolled into the course.
Yeah.
So somewhere or the else that Kida had gotten into me. I came back, recovered in 2 months, got my certificate, to my surprise alpha grading, and I said I have to go back for my advanced mountaineering course. So that Kida, as soon as I recovered, it came back from within.
Yeah.
And then I just needed more and more excuses to run away from school.
Okay, now through this podcast, I want people to feel that feeling of being on top of a peak. I want you to, for a minute, make people actually believe that they are on the highest peak in the world, Mount Everest or Makalu or Choyu, whichever. What does it look like? What does it feel like around you? And what is that feeling?
For a layman, see, obviously it might all seem same, right? Life above 8,000 meters, but there are a couple of things which are obviously very crazily repeating on all the 8,000 meter mountains. Obviously,
You've sat at the summit?
Yes, when you're sitting at 29,035 feet, the very roof of this world, it's a different feeling. Life above 8,000 meters is very different. I still remember, like when I summited Everest for the first time, seeing the earth bend in front of you, right? Being able to see the curvature of earth itself was crazy. When you're talking about these 8,000 meter peaks, they are the largest. We can almost call them like the largest living animals which rise above the crust of this earth, right? There's nothing more bigger than this.
You are actually on those peaks, sitting there. What does it feel like? That's what I want to know.
See, when you make it to the top, there is like a whole list of checklists in your head things which you have to get done, check, and start heading back down as well. Because you're on a timer. If you're using supplementary oxygen, and if your oxygen runs out, as easy as it looks while even descending a mountain, coming down also becomes very difficult. You can barely even take 2 or 3 steps if you run out of oxygen. So you're on a timer, you're quick, you have to save your battery, you have to save your resources and start heading down as well, because it's only halfway to the top. Right? So survival is necessary. You cannot get late. If the evening happens and if a storm comes in, you're going to die. You just cannot give up. So,
but how long do you spend on that peak?
Hardly. We end up spending hardly 15 to 20 minutes on the summit.
Bas.
Right? But those 15 to 20 minutes are enough to last, I think, a real mountain lover a lifetime.
Your favorite peak, which one?
Definitely Everest. It was the first one, and it will always be very special to me.
Can you call? Is there satellite phone जो चलेगा वहाँ से?
Satellite phones do work, but we keep them for emergencies. We keep them if the weather is clear, if you've been able to save the battery. It depends on a lot of factors whether your satellite phone also lasts us all the way to the summit. The only source of heat in those environments where temperatures are going down to -60, -70, you have to keep everything inside your down suit.
If you don't mind me
Again.
asking, what is your weight? What is your weight without the down? What is your current weight right
It is
now?
71 kgs.
71.
Right. So what you were saying, I would quickly want to come back to that you want to give a call from the summit and all of these things. ऐसा कुछ नहीं आता दिमाग में, because see, I always tell this thing to people that I like to climb the mountains outside. Most of the times it's just the mind which you have to convince, but your body is actually much more stronger than what we can even imagine. So this is the kind of mindset which you're in, right? When you can see 1/3 of the oxygen levels of what we breathe out here, right? Temperatures seeping down crazily.
उस समय भी at the summit, at the peak, you're thinking survival, huh? That's your first thought?
Well, quite honestly, yes, because there is this sense of euphoria. You've been training for this moment for such a long time. And every time you attempt an 8,000 meter peak and you come back, you're completely finished, right? So every time you go back, you have to start from the very scratch. So it's a very tedious process to be able to make it to the top of a mountain. So definitely the top is very addictive, right? It's very good for your ego.
Do you feel relief?
No, the brain does not stop working at the summit, because the summit is only halfway to the top, right?
Yeah, absolutely correct. अच्छा एक और चीज़ बताओ. Have you ever put the flag of India on the summit?
So this is a very one of the most asked questions ever. That did you plant the Indian flag on the summit? So I generally try to hold it upwards like this, and it unfurls right over my head. Unfortunately, when it gets too windy, it gets very difficult. Like once on the summit of Manaslu, most of my summit pictures had come out with the Indian flag upside down, because the wind was flowing from down the mountain. So I was holding it from the top, and the flag went upside down, and my Sherpa took those pictures, and my camera died. What can be done, right? Nature is nature, and we all have to comply with it. And so, answering your question, we do not plant the flag, but we unfurl it, and I think it's a beautiful feeling to be able to
must be
represent your country.
चलिए let's move to an unfortunate truth when it comes to mountaineering, climbing. Bottom line, you'll end up losing a lot of people that you start your expedition with, right? At various points in time. It could be while going up, it could be while coming down. I want you to elaborate a little bit more in terms of some stories where you may have lost some near and dear ones, and not just losing them.
See, it's almost like now today, after having done 15 8,000 meter expeditions, just stating some facts over here. I think there have only been 2 or 3 expeditions out of the 15 8,000 meter peaks which I've summited, which I attempted till now. I think where we've come back with the same number of people who we left with.
Really?
Unfortunately, the cost of exploration, pushing your limits, having these beautiful summits has to be paid with life at times. I always tell everybody around me that my real achievement is not that I've climbed 8,000 meter peaks, but it's that I have all my 10 fingers and all my 10 toes even after 15 expeditions.
Why do you say that, Arjun? For the layman, I need you to explain to them when you say, because we always hear
frostbite, because it's basic logic. If you go to see, your heart is in the center, and your extremities are the ones which are the most exposed, because in extremely cold environments your nerve endings जो होती हैं वो जमना शुरू हो जाती हैं. तो your extremities, basically tips of your fingers, tips of your toes, nose, earlobes,
ये part freeze हो जाता है.
The tissue dies. If cells die, so if the cells die, you can still recover. But if the tissue dies, then it starts to turn black, basically.
Yes, of course.
And then you have to amputate it. Sometimes when the infection is spreading too much, we'd had to do amputation on the mountain. Sometimes at base camp.
How can you do that, Arjun? Mountain पे कैसे करोगे?
A little whiskey on the hand and a little whiskey inside the system.
तो कौन
and that probably.
But कौन काट रहा है?
We have trained people now that you are living in such environments. A mountain has to wear various hats. We have medical general backup at base camp, because obviously sometimes attention needs to be given to people right then and there when they come immediately off the mountain. Sometimes certain things can be done up on the beyond base camp as well, and sometimes certain things can go back and be
because
taken
you're
at
not
Kathmandu.
carrying any paramedics with you.
We
911 तो dial होने नहीं वाला.
Generally, we do have a high altitude mountain training doctor, which is along with us at base camp as a part of.
But
most
only
of the
till base
expeditions.
camp, right?
Yes.
What is your average batch of people who go with you?
Depends on expedition to expedition, mountain to
Give me an
mountain.
average.
If you look at Everest, it has almost every season now almost 500-600 climbers attempting it.
So you
as
will
part
go-
of different teams.
you will go with
Right?
500 people?
Not we will go. Just the mountain which is being attempted. Probably my team would be 7-8 people. It depends on the logistical operator with whatever company you're deciding to go with.
Okay.
Now it has become a very evolved sport. It's no more
So
like
out
that.
of 8, how many people?
Generally, like one to we know only sometimes goes here and there. We consider it very lucky if nobody goes. There was another Indian
There is-
climber who had fallen into a crevasse who got rescued 3 days later. He was given CPR for almost 3.5 hours,
Yeah.
and then he recovered. But there was unfortunately the more experienced one. Like sometimes, that's why I'm telling you, like nature, when you come face to face with such virgin nature, you realize it has a lot of lessons involved in it, beautiful lessons also, but it does bring us face to face with reality of how nature only knows one language: survival of the fittest.
No, but you've
Right?
also been, and you've also been declared, and whoever's hearing this podcast right now might think that this is some kind of a weird show, but the reality is that you were declared clinically dead in a way, right? What happened while you were scaling a particular mountain, and tell us which one it was. What happened that you went into such a situation, and how were you revived?
See, there are many situations like this in the mountains where the rope has broken, I have gone tumbling down a mountain, the anchor came off 150 meters into a free fall, got tangled up in a rope. Free fall, just tumbling on the backside like this at 7,000 plus meter altitudes on Annapurna itself in my first attempt. But it does come to tell us one thing. See that if it's not your day to die, it's not your day to die.
But what happened that day? I mean, you fell 150 feet.
Back in 2019, let's say, if I take the Annapurna expedition thing, there was an anchor entire snowbar which came out from the top because the Jumar was too close to it. Very technical things.
That's
the ship
fine.
was in front of us. We were opening a line. The ropes were buried. Took the Jumar very close to the anchor, and the entire anchor, the weight bearing capacity when it's put into the snow, it should be downwards.
Yeah.
But he pulled it a little upwards, so it all came down. We were all 6-7 people were on the same rope down. So we all got off the rope and we were all hanging in a steep place. And on Annapurna, there is, as I said, there is no less technical phase which you can attempt.
Yeah.
So if you slip, especially with all the mountaineering gear, which is all snowproof and waterproof and everything, it acts like a ski on
Yeah.
the snow slope. So you go like a nice sledge down the mountain.
Yeah.
And arresting yourself is very difficult if you don't have adequate snow, and especially in that situation you're going backwards.
Yes, of course.
Very difficult to
No control.
No control. Same thing happened back in 2012.
But what happened after that when you fell down?
Fell down, went tumbling, and it all happens very fast. And then there was a horizontal rope, an old expedition rope, which was still stuck over there, and routes keep changing, right? Little bit.
Yeah.
Major route stays the same geographically on the mountain, but how you navigate through the ice, because as I said, you remember ants on the mountain?
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, whatever you see from base camp is like tiny, is like probably a very big rock face when you're attempting it, when you're crossing it, because that's the distance.
See,
that's the
we see all this
scale.
only in James Bond movies, right? or when we see your good friend Hrithik Roshan take you through the Mountain Dew ad, and we feel everything is cool, anyone can do this, but that's not true, right? But I want to come back because I want the audience to understand it's not an easy life. It's not easy to do what you're doing, because at the end of the day,
But I also feel that there are more beautiful things to look at in the mountains. Like you look at the night skies. Obviously, the days, the climbs are hard. is difficult.
When do you climb?
But-
Night time or daytime?
So summit push generally happens during night time. Weather in the Himalayas generally starts to get packed after the afternoons. During the and it starts to get clear by the evening. So generally we try to attempt it during the night. All our
Isn't
long
that
day
the-
movements.
But that's the coldest time of the day.
It's actually not the coldest. When the storm comes in, then it's the coldest basically at those altitudes. It's always cold. We are all surrounded by ice.
But it doesn't
Planet
go
Earth.
fully dark at night, right? It must be.
No, that's the whole
that's
point.
a twilight kind of
Once
a light.
you go above a certain altitude, you've left most of the atmosphere below you now. Most of the cumulus nimbus clouds are now under you.
Yeah.
And only the cirrus, the high altitude clouds are above you now, right? So you can actually see, it's like, I always tell, it's like a show every night over there.
Off screen, off air, you were talking about the fact that you've had near death experiences where you felt you were no more, or you were clinically declared that you were no more by by other people in your expedition. But there has to be some fear factor in this, right? I mean, tell me about those two instances where one, a paralytical attack happened, and the other is where near death.
I think both the instances I remember very vividly. I think the 2012 one was extremely intense in its own manner, and the 2019 one had its own lessons hidden for me within it. 2012, I remember, being a little too overconfident because I'd never seen failure before in my life.
Which mountain is this?
This is Cho Yu. We were attempting two 8,000 meter peaks. I just summited Everest, Lhotse and Manaslu and done it all in my first go. As I said, I felt like Hercules. I was only 18 years old, and suddenly the mountain decided to humble me a little bit down. I always like to say it now when I think about it, that it killed me, but it kept me alive enough just to go back to her as well. But back during that time, it was very hard. Actually, when such incidents happen, we were at Camp 2, the storm clouds moved in, there were two more Sherpas along with me. Sherpas are basically our backbone of our system when we are climbing 8,000 meter peaks. Without them, no expedition is complete. So they really tried to push me, as I was a young climber with lesser experience. So they really tried to, manage the situation when we were stuck in cloud, when we were stuck in this stormy condition at Camp 2. We were attempting it in the spring season. Most teams attempt this mountain in the autumn season. So we were any which ways. We had very limited manpower at base camp. I'm talking about 2012 Cho Yu expedition. Deep inside Tibet, no helicopters fly over there. Nothing flies. So what happened was storm clouds moved in, whiteout happens, kept snowing, first day happens, second day it keeps snowing. We have to, probably the situation becomes like this, that we have to sleep also in, routine.
Together.
No, we have to sleep turn by turn basically. Because if you all sleep together and if the snowfall happens too much, then your tent can also get buried and you can get buried. So oxygen can get cut, everything can happen. So we had to sleep in turn by turn basically. We were all very exhausted by the third night. As the fourth day, by the third night I was just fine, but as the fourth day kicked in and it showed no sign of the weather improving, jet streams were in the region. As the fourth day I woke up, I felt something very funny on the left side of my body. I generally also, when I'm sleeping at home, I tend to drool a bit from my face. So I thought I was drooling and it was normal, but soon I realized that my left hand was not working. So how you sometimes end up sleeping on your hand and there's not enough blood, which is so gaya हाथ जैसे बोलते हैं. तो मुझे पहले लगा वो है, फिर मैंने नहीं, there's something more funnier. My leg is also, left leg was also not moving. So then soon enough I realized, I woke up both my Sherpas, I heard them Dai, and then as soon as they looked at my face lying down, they knew that there was something wrong because they could see it from my facial expressions.
Visually you can see it also,
there was something wrong in my head itself. Generally when you spend so much time in altitudes above 7,000 meters, 8,000 meters, blood starts to get thick. So clots start to get formed. So I was suffering that time, at that particular morning, from cerebral thrombosis. I had 11 clots in my head, which was preventing adequate amount of blood flow on the left side of my body. So reality humbled me. And finally, I had previously been on expeditions where I had the 3 summits which I had done. I had seen, not part of my expedition, but I had seen fellow mountaineers being left behind to save more number of lives. And that's the harsh truth of mountaineering. Sometimes you have to calculate very bad. You are always pushed against
But
your
tell me,
ethics,
this
right?
is because of the 3 days of excessive snowfall.
Excessive
routine,
snowfall, we lost our oxygen
and
supplies.
you did not feel at all when this happened. So once you're going through this phase, right? What happens next?
So,
how are you going to now come down?
Exactly. So I cannot come down with just the help of 2 Sherpas. They really try, but there are 2 very steep sections right below Camp 2. The call was taken. They had to save themselves. They had families to go back to. They had children to address. And that day I was the person who was being left behind. But they did promise that they will come back for a rescue operation. And if not, definitely a recovery operation of my body. And that's the moment when I stayed in the tent. Obviously, I called my mom and I told her that day that, Mom, I'm not coming home this time. I did that call with my parents. And obviously, a lot of things happened, right, at that particular moment. But that's what I'm trying to tell you.
You had to call home and tell them that not going to come home this time?
Yes. And I hate it till date that I put my parents, my mother through such a terrible time. But I had no other option. I was convinced that I was going to die that day, right? And probably, it had been so long at that altitude that we were running out of all kinds of juices in our phones, juices in all kinds of battery, butane to melt the snow and make water, butane to required to make food. Nothing was now almost there.
Did the Sherpas leave
and then they had to save themselves and come back with more resources in better weather conditions. So after that 4th day, even the second younger Sherpa had started to get headaches. We'd lost our oxygen supplies. We'd buried some butane gas over there, but we were not able to find that with all of this whiteout happening and everything.
Yeah.
So situations can definitely roll out of hand like that with Mother Nature. And when you're going through it, you do not realize, right?
How did you come down?
I started crawling, as I said. I tore the tent.
How many thousands of...
No, that's what I told you. That
Wow.
we just crawled down, pushed myself down a cliff when I reached the end of the mountain, and then they found me at the base of the wall where I was unconscious. So it was completely by miracle that
you have no recollection of how you were
2 to
brought
3
down?
hours I remember pushing, seeing everything was white. I kept going. I finally reached the ice cliff. I saw now with this one hand and this one leg, I cannot obviously come down.
Yeah.
So I had to take the call that whether I freeze over here on this edge of this cliff or I push myself down. If I push myself down, I might survive. If I don't push myself down, I will certainly die. So that was the call which I took. So as stupid as it sounds sitting here right now, those are the chances, though that's the margin of error which we are working with. Half of a foot here and there, you're
right. I mean, I think the mountaineers are a special breed. It is brave, it is tough, and you follow your passion. Most importantly, it's not you're doing it for your passion. Okay, so Arjun, I want to ask you a question which is very close to my heart. Complete this statement for me if you can, because I want to know your thought process through that.
Okay.
Practice makes dash.
Practice makes a man, a human being, I think, get used to hard work and grinding. It sets you into a mindset where you are able to disassociate yourself from the very basic physical pain, exterior factors affecting a performance. It reaches that place in your head where it's almost like a meditative state, where all of these external factors don't bother you anymore. You're doing what people consider exceptional things subconsciously. I think that is what practice helps you get, because till the time you're adapting, you're just responding.
A 30-year-old Arjun today had to meet a 16-year-old Arjun 14 years ago. What would you, as a mentor, guide, philosopher, tell that 16-year-old before he is going to make his first climb? He's chosen to do what he wants to do. Let's not go into dream big. He's already dreamt big. Now he's ready to take that flight. What would you advise him? Just a few words on that.
Always remember, I think if today I was going to talk to the 16-year-old Arjun, I would definitely tell him to keep your parents close to you. They really, because I have, at certain points for certain ethics, and because youngsters, when we dream big and when we really manifest our dreams into reality, we feel that we've earned our right for our own, thoughts and ideas and everything. But we often forget that the dreams also which we have are not ours.
Yeah.
they also somewhere or the else depend on where you're born, how you're born, to whom you're born, which we don't have any control over, right? It is just natural. So I feel that keep your parents close. They're the only two people in your life who'll prioritize you first. Unconditionally, and at times they might restrict you from doing things, but it's for the best. Like they might, you might not end up seeing everything on this planet, but it might be sometimes for the best also.
But did you go through arrogance?
Yes.
So did a 16-year-old Arjun at that time go through lots of arrogance? कि मैं तो कुछ भी कर सकता हूँ.
And that's what I'm telling you. So though success is very good and very good ego massaging, and you get to shove it in all your friends' faces, and you sound like a stupid fool. You're like putting out statements how children do it. They'll pick up one word from here and then they'll speak it at the wrong place. Same way like this, you get the confidence, but you don't know where to put it. So practice, keep your head on your shoulders, keep your parents close to you. If you cannot convince your parents about an idea, forget convincing the rest of the world. Obviously, like the first time when I ever mentioned to my parents that I want to climb Everest, it was I still remember vividly. I still live in the same house. It was an open kitchen. I'd come back from my advanced mountain course. It was evening time. बस में बैठ के वापस आया था. पूरा पसीना, अभी नहाया भी नहीं था, कपड़े भी नहीं चेंज करते. बैकपैक सब ऐसे ही पड़ा हुआ है हॉल में. पापा अपना शाम को बैठ के हिसाब लिख रहे थे डायरी में. और मम्मी सामने किचन में मेरे लिए पराठे सेक रही थी. तो लड़का घर आया 28 दिन बाद.
सही बात है.
लट गया वहाँ पे, गाल वाल सब अंदर घुस गए पहली बारी. तो मैंने मॉम को बोला कि बिकॉज इन माई एडवांस माउंटेन कोर्स व्हेन आई सबमिटेड DKD2, वन ऑफ माई इंस्ट्रक्टर्स हैड टोल्ड मी कि if you can climb this mountain, I definitely think you can climb Everest one day. But because he said it was one day, in my head I was like, today I have to do it.
This is today.
So obviously first, who do you seek to validation from? My parents. So then I told my mom that I want to climb Everest. And she looks back at me, shrugs her shoulders, and she says, even I want to go to the moon, but I have more chances of reaching the moon than you even reaching the base of Mount Everest. So it was that kind of a thing. And then I looked towards my dad being an ex-paramilitary officer. I knew that I'd gotten this adventure instinct from him itself. He would understand. And I knew his friends were from the adventure background. So I told him, and he's like, कि अभी पढ़ाई पे फोकस करो, अभी तुम वापस आए हो, क्या एवरेस्ट करते हो, I'll try and find out. So after a little bit of convincing my father, so once we got to know that Everest back in the day also costed 22-24 lakh rupees, my mother was shocked and she said, इतने में तो मैं अपनी बेटी की शादी करवा दूँ.
But how did you organize the?
So then I was very enterprising. I don't know how. I always say this. I don't want to overcomplicate it also, but it was a time when there was no keto, there was no crowdfunding platform. Facebook pe, if you would post a picture, you could not even write a caption under it. It used to be that different. So just the idea of a 16-year-old climbing Everest, because it had never happened before in history in 2010, was so crazy, was so captivating that it got picked up by the media and got started rotating that an Indian 16-year-old boy from Noida wants to climb Everest and he's looking for funds. I did not have an account. I was only less than 16 that time. So there were editors like from Pune, from Hyderabad. Deccan Herald is calling, Sakal is calling from Pune, and editors are calling saying that people want to send Arjun money. How do we send it to you guys?
Wow.
So then they opened a joint account and something like this. So certain money orders started coming in. They started publishing like this. So there were more than 24,000 people by just word of mouth.
24,000 people donated.
As small as 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees and 1,500 rupees came along, and very valuable lessons came along. People from humble backgrounds like a carpenter who has a wife, who has a mother and is living in a one-bedroom flat with his with his teacher wife who is working in a government school. सबने 500 रुपए जोड़ के 1,500 रुपए ऐसे भेजे. But the money did not matter. Money put me on the Everest. But what got me back from the Everest today, I realized, were the blessings which came along with.
This is unbelievable.
So 24,000 people, and that's what I want to tell to all the youngsters also. Don't overcomplicate your dreams. Fall in love with the process. Fall in love. Be honest with your dreams and work hard. Then suddenly you'll see this magic happen where the entire cosmos somehow starts to manifest and attract people towards your idea if you are honest. But be honest. Your intentions should be clear.
What an amazing story in terms of getting your first expedition. But uske baad, it was easy to get sponsors? After you scaled the Everest, easy work? It was still tough.
No, I feel very grateful. I'll sound very stupid, but there were a lot of challenges. But I'm very grateful to have become India's first professional mountaineer. Where I grew up in a generation where becoming an adventurer, mountaineer was only a dream which the people from the armed forces could have had.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was such a big luxury. But if I was able to do it, I think I was one of the worst cases. Anybody can do it.
Wow.
So you have to be enterprising. You have to be backing your ideas.
So who are your sponsors today who help you still? Because you're all over, you're still scaling mountains, you still have this dream of doing the Grand Slam. Where's the money coming from? Because there's a lot of people out there who are saying, I want to be like Arjun. You're an idol, inspiration for the next generation without a shadow of doubt in my mind, right? You are a superhero to have gone all the way to Everest at 16. Today there's another 13, 14, 15-year-old sitting on this podcast watching and saying, I want to go.
But from a very young age, now ulta I have become very calculative about money and things like this, because now, I look at things very differently. But before, I just considered it like a number which had to match with whatever I needed.
Sure, of course.
Like I never had, but I was ready to give up everything for it. If I want something in my life, I'm ready to literally give up even the things which I cannot imagine of. But that day, if I want that thing, I will have it. And you can ask me anything in return and I will give that to you. I want every youngster to know that I found the sponsors in various forms. Sometimes they were conglomerates who were invested into my vision without any commercial aspects. There were various industrialists who liked the honesty and the lessons and my perspective about climbing mountains. So they supported me. When they saw that I'd picked up the site, they started getting me connected. I was able to attract some sponsors. But I also worked hard.
Today, there is no problem at all for you. So you can be a professional mountaineer today. It is a profession.
Absolutely, yes. A full-time professional mountaineer can be there. We have, back in 2010, there were only 2 crore people in India who were actively accessing the outdoors. Today, we have more than 20 crore Indians. The young India has become very adventurous.
Fantastic.
Who are incorporating adventure activities into their travel plans.
Yeah.
So 22 crore people are traveling and incorporating adventure. I think the way forward is definitely very positive for all adventure, not just mountaineering, all adventure activities and outdoor scene in India.
Okay, before moving any further, everyone, including myself, wants to know some very, very basic questions from a mountaineer like yourself. Huh?
Right.
Where do you go to the loo? How do you have water? How much stuff do you carry for cooking? And what do you eat on a mountain? I want answers to all of these. Tell us. Yeah.
So basically, when we've crossed the glaciers and when you're up at Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, your only source of water, because all the soil is left behind, everything is left behind. The temperature conditions are always in sub-0 degrees Celsius. So we have to melt the ice. We use small butane portable stoves to melt the ice because petroleum and diesel won't work over there with the lack of oxygen.
Freeze ho jayega.
Correct. It can freeze as well, and it doesn't burn properly with the lack of oxygen and such cold environments. So we use butane stoves.
Okay.
We melt the ice. We have to beware of the yellow ice because that would essentially mean that has pee in it. So we do pee in the open when we are talking about toilets.
What are you melting ice for? For drinking water?
So melting ice serves 2 purposes basically.
Yeah.
First, you melt the ice, boil it, and then our MREs, meals ready to eat, all the Fauji kind of ration.
Yeah.
Tastes like horrible. But I try to take some packed poha and upma and stuff like this from back at home, and some Haldiram namkeen obviously comes very handy up there.
Wow,
because
nice.
you don't have an appetite with lack of oxygen, with so much fatigue, you tend to lose your appetite. So MREs are these silver packets. We boil the water and you have to boil melt a lot of ice to build a little bit water. When you keep melting ice, it reduces in volume.
Yeah.
So much of ice will make only probably half a cup of water.
Sure.
So you have to keep melting, and then boiling point comes faster, so you have to boil it also for longer because with a higher altitude, the atmospheric pressure drops, so boiling starts happening at 70 degrees, 80 degrees itself. You boil it for longer. And then you put these packets in it, you warm up your food, it's already cooked. Taste is, as I said, horrible.
Yeah.
But point is not taste, it's just nutrition and recovery. So
Yeah.
we gulp it down whatever we can,
Okay.
and we pack it with some things. And later the same water, we put a basically iodine tablet, and we have our purification ways.
Yeah.
So we do that, and then you have to drink this. So
You're
source of drinking
purifying it like an RO system you're creating right there on your own.
on our own, correct? Because
God.
somewhere or the else, glacier water is still not sourced with minerals. Minerals will only get infused in the water once it comes down the valley and goes through the mud and
Okay, so-
rocks, and all of these things are going to. Glacial water is just like distilled water.
You can't have that ice and like put it inside you and it's
No,
like...
not at all. It'll never be sufficient enough. You have to melt it into a liquid form, and then.
No, I'm talking about from the purity perspective.
Also, from the purity perspective, you can, but it will not. We generally add a little magnesium and iodine and all
Just
to purify
for
it,
purity.
and also some salts in it, like basic electrolytes and stuff too.
Okay.
Even make it little
That's water
worthwhile,
done.
so that you can get properly dehydrated. Then we'll come to the most important job is, खाना खा लिया तो relief भी तो करना ही है ना. What goes in does come out. so with lack of oxygen, obviously you are getting a lot of gases, and you can well imagine tents are very tiny packed places with like 3 and 4 people,
Yeah.
all sweaty people who've not taken baths for 30, 40 days.
Yeah.
So accumulating salts and all kinds of bacteria on them. So not the most hygienic environment, but
Yeah.
it's cold, so it's okay. So
Yeah.
anything apart from ice, snow and rock beyond a certain altitude is basically essentially trash.
Okay.
Right? So we cannot, with climbing such beautiful, magnificent, virgin states of nature, we also have to conserve it, right? You
course.
cannot pollute it. So even human waste is considered trash over there. So
Yes.
there are these rest stop bags which has bioorganic powder inside it. A vestibule comes out of it. It's like this Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
You open it, a small vestibule comes out of it. You open it and you keep it down, and you literally have to, like, astronauts have to like aim and do it. Like
Yeah.
there's a pilot, we have to like aim and do it, fix it, and then you obviously have sanitizers and tissues which are like with
Oh
it.
my God.
It turns your poop into basically gel,
Yeah.
so it does not smell.
Yeah.
And then you put the vestibule in. You can use one resto bag twice, so the second round is not generally very
Nice. Yeah.
and then you have to zip it up and
Yeah.
get it back down with you on your way back down.
You bring it all the way
Down to base camp, and it is sent back down to a place where it can be decomposed and managed well, because human waste needs bacteria and soil to decompose again, which is not over there. And now the
Interesting.
third thing was food.
So food, water, human waste, and
water,
heat.
human waste.
How do you provide heat to yourself? Minus 60
As-
degrees.
I don't know how many of our viewers have seen Brokeback Mountain, but as basic as that, nobody gives a damn if who's lying next to you when it's cold, and especially in the night when it gets cold and everything starts to freeze. Temperatures go down to an extent where even the moisture in your breath starts to freeze on the tent above you
Yeah.
and on the front patch of this thing. So you just stick to each other, like you know,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get
yeah.
into this cuddle zone where like everybody's like sleeping right next to each other. You hug each other and you try and hope that you wake up the next day.
Yeah, and how do you pee over there?
Again, very interesting.
Very basic questions.
Yeah, but nothing happens normally because it's 8,000 meters.
Yeah.
So even peeing in like extremely cold conditions, I remember it was once so cold on Lhotse. It was the night time, and I generally perpetually in the night time only, because you have to keep hydrating also.
Yeah.
And then finally when your sleeping bag gets warm, then you start getting the pee.
Yeah.
So then you have to leave your sleeping bag and go out and pee. And then I was peeing in the night and I couldn't hear the sound of the pee hitting the ground. So there's only smoke coming out of there.
Ye ho kya raha hai?
So I looked from the side, and it was so cold that the pee wasn't even touching the ground. With the wind, it was just flying in the air. So you take a cup of hot boiling water, you throw it in the sky, it would not reach the ground. It's that
not.
cold over there. So the environment, as I was telling you, this very basic stuff also can get very difficult. Constipation is like a normal outcome, and gassy, like good farts are a good sign of digestion and an extra source of warmth up inside your tent.
It's a toughie. It's a toughie to even perform this. So a lot of training would go to do all this prior to that, right?
You tend to actually. The funny thing is,
You don't learn on the job.
Nobody teaches you these small things while you're training, because whenever you're training and stuff, like you're still in much more controlled environments.
So
You
it's
actually end
tough
up
to replicate.
learning these things on a job, and that too you're wearing like an entire down suit on an 8,000 meter mountain. It's almost like an astronaut suit. It
Yeah.
has like a half moon behind it. So managing so much feather, gear, harness. As funny as it would sound, people have often asked me, what's going on in your head
Yeah.
right before the summit push? And the honest answer which we most mountaineers say ki, because once you start climbing and you've worn the harness, there have been instances where if you're hanging from somewhere, you can't go down now, you can't go up. There's no place to even sit down and shit.
Yeah.
So you have to shit yourself. And first it feels very warm and then starts to trickle down and goes into your shoes, and later on you can get frostbite on it. But if it's there, it's there, and
It's
you have
there.
to do it. And this is the reality of mountaineering at times. So the dilemma which you're stuck in, that whether to put my harness or whether to go and like whether to put my harness and leave for the summit push, or whether to like go and try once again to shit
My
before I
God.
leave for the summit push. Like this is what a mountaineer's mind is going on to,
Yeah.
because he does not want to. Because he's eating also, and his digestion will take place once you start moving.
Thanks, Arjun. Thank you for coming all the way and taking time out for this podcast. I've had an amazing time. I think I've just sort of rediscovered my love for the mountains and knowledge. The amount of knowledge that you've given for me, our entire audience on this show. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time. And just the last bit I would like to say to all the youngsters out there, don't underestimate yourself. Dream big, dare to chase it. Find the Everest of your life and manifest it into reality.
सब्सक्राइब एंड नोटिफिकेशन की घंटी दबाइए और ये अगला शो जरूर देख के जाइए.